power plants, accommodation for workers, and even a small airport, which is necessary because it's in such a remote region. Since opening, the site has been responsible for producing around 7 million carats of diamonds each year, including a 552-carat yellow diamond that was found in 2018, and it's the largest to have ever been discovered in North America. Number 14. Fadioth, Senegal. Just a 1,300-foot walk across a bridge from the Senegalese coastal town of Yol, is one of the most unusual islands in the world. For hundreds of years, residents here have caught and sold mollusk meat and discarded the shells into the water. As these remains got caught up in mangroves, baobabs, and reeds, there are so many that they created an entirely new island, which is called Fadioth. Wherever you walk, you hear the crunch of shells beneath your feet, and the buildings and roads have also used shells in their construction. One of the most famous sites on the island is the cemetery, which itself is completely made from shells too, in what lies as a testament to how much this coastal community has relied upon the natural resources that the ocean has provided to them. Number 13. Isla La Gaiola, Italy. Gaiola Island is off the coast of Naples in the Gulf of Naples and is the center point of a protected marine reserve around the area. It's so close to the mainland that you can easily swim to it, and at one point there used to be a cable car that made the trip possible without even getting wet. It has long been used as a site of importance and was once covered in a series of Roman factories before the villa that still stands there today was built in the 19th century. Due to being formed by volcanic processes, the exposed rock face is a series of yellow and white colors, and ancient tunnels allow you to pass through the island from water level without having to climb up to its surface. Number 12. Alcatraz. The island of Alcatraz is in San Francisco Bay around 1.25 miles offshore from the city itself, and is one of the most famous prison sites in the U.S. Fortifications were first built there in the mid-19th century, and over the years further upgrades were made until it became the famed federal penitentiary in 1934. It was seen as the ideal place to hold dangerous criminals thanks to the freezing waters and strong currents that surrounded it. And during its operation, only a handful of people have ever been claimed to have successfully escaped. Despite its closure in 1963, the human activity on the island is clear to see, and it remains to this day one of the most recognizable and unusual-looking islands on Earth. Number 11. Vulcan Point, Philippines. This unassuming small island is known as Vulcan Point, and it holds a series of records that mean it's unlike any other island you'll find elsewhere in the world. It's the largest island that lies within the lake that's on the summit of a volcano, which itself is within the lake that lies on an island, and as such is known as a third-order island. Despite its serene surroundings and popularity with tourists, it's a place to approach with extreme caution. Taal Volcano, which lies within, is one of the most active volcanoes on Earth and has been linked with thousands of deaths. Vulcan Point is actually a remains of one of the volcano's cones, and the lake that surrounds it is the largest crater lake in the world. There's always a chance another eruption is imminent, and this island may not be around for much longer. Number 10. Kemper's Dam. Kemper's Dam is a body of water to the north of the city of Kimberley in South Africa. It used to be a temporary water source, but thanks to the new constant release of runoff and treated water from the city, it's now become a permanent feature. Conservationists noticed that the way the region was changing was having an effect on the local wildlife, so it was decided to build an artificial S-shaped island in it. The shape was chosen because it created 2 artificial bays, and it was completed in September of 2006 after moving 26,000 tons of material to the site. The plan was a success, and the dam is now one of the most important breeding sites for lesser flamingos thanks to the presence of the algae and diatoms that they feed on. This often leads to the unusual sight of more than 20,000 of the birds huddled together on the island, something you won't see anywhere else. Number 9. Hashima Island, Japan. Hashima Island is now abandoned, but it was once the center of Japan's Industrial Revolution. It was found to sit above vast coal deposits, so in 1887 it became the base of operations for a series of undersea mines. To support the works, seawall and land reclamation projects were undertaken which tripled the size of the island, and 4 main shafts were dug, one of which actually connects Hashima Island to one of its neighbors. At its peak, more than 5,000 people lived there in the concrete structures, but by 1974 the coal reserves began to run out. With no other reason to be there, the people soon moved away, and it was left as a historical monument that year by year has slowly been reclaimed by nature. Now it's protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and is often referred to as Battleship Island because of the way it now looks. Before we move on, be sure to subscribe to Top 5s with notifications on. Number 8. Bishop Rock, UK. Bishop Rock is an islet on the westernmost part of the Isles of Scilly, which are an archipelago that lies 28 miles off the southwestern coast of Britain. To warn approaching ships, an iron lighthouse was built on it in 1847 but was washed away, so a second one, which is the one that stands today, was constructed in 1858. With no room around the structure, it used to be the case that anyone leaving the island would have to rappel from the lighthouse into a waiting boat, and upon arriving they'd be lifted up by a winch. In 1976, a helipad was added to make transport easier, and as of 1992, it's fully automated, requiring only occasional maintenance visits. Bishop Rock currently holds the world record for being the world's smallest island with a building on it. And when you see how tight the fit is, you'll wonder whether it will be possible for anywhere else to claim this honor. Number 7. Tilafushi, Maldives. We hear so much about the amount of trash that's produced every year, but did you know there's an island that's completely made of it? Called Tilafushi. It's in the Maldives and was created as a municipal landfill for all the waste that's created by the tourism industry elsewhere. The first loads were deposited in late 1992. And now the island covers an area of 4.6 million square feet. The waste is put in pits that have been dug into the shallow seabed, then covered in industrial waste and a layer of white sand. It's now become such a size that plots on the surface are rented by commercial operations such as boat manufacturers, cement producers, and methane bottlers, which means that this island that didn't even exist 30 years ago now generates more than $1 million per year. Now, around 330 tons of trash is brought to the island per day, which is raising concerns about the long-term viability of Tilafushi. Soon it may be necessary to stop using it as a landfill, and efforts might be even needed to remove everything that's been deposited there before it pollutes the surrounding marine environment. Number 6. The World, Dubai. The World was a much-heralded artificial archipelago that was constructed 2.5 miles off the coast of Dubai and designed to look like a map of Earth. At an estimated cost of around $10 billion, there are 300 different islands, which are arranged into 7 different continents and were formed from 386 million tons of rock and 321 million cubic meters of sand. Despite it seeming like a great idea at the time, construction began in 2003, but was forced to halt during the financial crisis of 2008. While many of the islands were reserved in principle, there simply weren't enough funds available to develop the intended buildings on them. And to this day, only a few of them are in use. This means it's a rather peculiar site of a series of sandy islands, with an occasional one that has a structure on it. There are now concerns that many of the islands are sinking back into the water, and it's quite possible this will soon be remembered as one of the most expensive failed vanity projects that was ever undertaken. Number 5. The Island of Dolls, Mexico City. The Island of Dolls is probably the creepiest island in the world thanks to a dark history that has led a number of unusual trinkets being displayed in the trees and buildings. It's to the south of Mexico City, in the waterways of Xochimilco, and was owned by Don Julian Santana in the 1950s. According to legend, a young woman was visiting the island, and while swimming in the canal, she became entangled in the lilies and drowned. Her body was found on the banks of the island, and Santana began experiencing supernatural events. He kept hearing a voice calling out for her dolls, so began to collect dolls from garbage dumps and that floated past in the water, and hung them on the branches of the trees around where she was discovered. Over the next 50 years, he continued to do this, driven by fear that he was being haunted by her spirit, and resulted in hundreds of body parts and shrines being displayed across the island. He died in 2001, supposedly at the same site where the girl had died 50 years earlier, and since then the place has become a popular tourist destination. People visit with their own tributes for the island, and it continues to grow each year. Visitors describe an eerie silence around certain parts, feel chills, and even hear voices, which adds to the mythology of the place and has solidified it as being one of the most unusual-looking islands on Earth. Number 4. The floating islands of Lake Titicaca, Bolivia. You normally think of an island as being a natural formation, or one that's been artificially created by moving hundreds of tons of rocks and sediment. But in Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, there are around 120 islands that are completely different. They belong to the Uru people, whose ancestors laid claim to the waters of the lake. To help defend themselves and access remote regions to fish, they built a series of floating islands from reeds. This method is still used to this day, and it's amazing to see. They begin by making boats from totora reeds, and then collect further reeds and roots that are tied together by rope. By building them up layer after layer, the floating platforms are up to 6 feet thick and are anchored in position by being tied to eucalyptus poles that are buried into the lake floor. The largest of the islands have room for homes of up to 10 families and require a new layer to be added every few weeks to remain stable. The islands last for around 30 years before needing to be completely replaced and are still the main residences for several hundred people. The surface of the island is soft, and each step you'll take you'll notice your foot sinking a few inches. Unsurprisingly, they're now a popular tourist destination, and rather than working the lake for income, most residents now offer tours and lessons on how to prepare the reeds for construction. Number 3. Naoshima, Japan. Naoshima Island is the largest island in Japan's Kagawa district and is in the Seto Inland Sea. The town on the island has a population of just over 3,000 people, but it has become famous around the world for all of the art museums that are located there. The 3 most popular are the Chichu Art Museum, the Benesse House, and the James Bond Museum. But the island's embrace of the arts also means that installations can be seen everywhere. It's affectionately known as the Art Island, where various pieces commissioned by the world's leading artists are either displayed in public or in their own specially designed venues. The structures have been designed to look as natural as possible, and the only things that really stand out above the landscape is the colorful artwork. One of the most common things you'll see there are the pumpkins, one of which lies on the jetty you arrive on. But there's also a series of underground stone mazes, puzzles that are designed for visitors to figure out on their own, and a huge crypt that's lined with copper bars and has a giant sphere at the center. If you imagine your local museum of modern art but arranged over an entire island, that's how Naoshima looks and feels, making it one of the most unique centers of culture you'll find anywhere in the world. Number 2. Socotra Island, Yemen. Socotra Island has been called the closest place on Earth to what life would be like on an alien planet, and for good reason. Nestled within a 4-island archipelago between the Gardefui Channel and the Arabian Sea, it's about 150 miles east of Somalia, but officially part of Yemen. Unusually for an island like this, Socotra wasn't formed by volcanic activity, but instead is continental land that detached from the Gondwana supercontinent around 20 million years ago. Because it has been separated from everywhere else for so long, it's developed its own unique flora and fauna, with 700 species that aren't found anywhere else, a number that's only eclipsed by New Zealand, New Caledonia, the Galapagos, and Hawaii. What's different there, however, is the extreme heat and lack of moisture that everything has evolved to survive in. Possibly the most famous tree that's endemic to the island is called the dragon's blood tree, which looks like an umbrella shape and had a deep red sap that oozes out of it. Other unusual species include the cucumber tree, the Socotron pomegranate, and various types of aloe. Deep caves have some of the most impressive stalagmite and stalactite formations on Earth, and some of the canyons and landscape look unlike anything you'll find anywhere else, hence why it's described as an alien island. Animal life is also peculiar on Socotra and includes various endemic bird species, a number of reptiles such as skinks, legless lizards, and a species of chameleon, and a few spiders, including a tarantula that's only found on the island, and 3 unique species of crabs. The island is designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it's far more difficult to visit than any other. Due to its political affiliation with Yemen, it's often reliant on donations from other countries to keep functioning. These communities that live on the island only have basic amenities. There is therefore very little tourism activity, and for those who visit, there are no hotels and just a few guest houses to choose from. Locals even protest and try to avoid the construction of new roads, despite the benefits they may bring, because of the damage they cause to the ecosystem, and this all adds up to help keep the island's unique appearance so well preserved. Number 1. Madagascar. Madagascar lies around 250 miles off the eastern coast of Africa and is the fourth largest island in the world. It's separated from the Indian subcontinent approximately 88 million years ago and, as a result, has been isolated from the rest of the world, which has allowed life to evolve in a different direction, and also the creation of highly unusual geographical structures. 80% of the plant species there aren't found anywhere else in the world, and the same's true of around 90% of the animals too. There are forests of dry, deciduous trees, ones of spiny trees, and even a large forest of sharp, jagged limestone structures that are unlike anything you'll find elsewhere in the world. The island's position also makes it subject to unusual weather patterns, with warmer winds blowing across from the African continent that meet the cooler winds that travel over the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. If there's ever a place to visit to see something different, then Madagascar surely has to be it. Subscribe to Top 5s for more and check out some of our other popular videos.